Oh yeah, mega explosive stuff tonight, and I'm not kidding. Saddle up, get out your little zip gun. You're gonna need it where we're going tonight. Greetings, this is Mars with the Watchers Prophecy News. For those that don't know, I do conspiracy radio for the Watchers Society. Private think tank, the most elite thinkers on the end of days ever. And as always, I have epic information for your mind! Yeah! Get me some of that. Yeah. I'm telling you, there are some deep things going on. Things you better keep your eyeballs peeled on, because they're not going to get any better. Now, just unbelievable. You're about to step into a different zone tonight. Zone that I rarely go to. But tonight we're going there. For sure.
Please identify the craft you witness.
A black, triangular, three-dimensional shape, huge.
Please identify the craft you witness.
A black, triangular, three-dimensional shape, huge, just flying, hovering mimic.
Please identify the craft you witness.
A black, triangular, three-dimensional shape, huge, just flying, hovering mimic.
Shaped like almost like between an egg and like a teardrop.
Two long cylinder objects flying over me.
You had a drone. I could see the occupants in
Appeared to be rotating and circular in a disc shape, and it hovered for maybe about 5 minutes.
Ah, Kirk, my old friend. Do you know the Klingon proverb that tells us revenge is a dish that is best served cold?
That seems to be what's happening right now all over the world. A little bit of revenge. To get to some of the most breaking items tonight before I change your mind about the world's condition. As I said, I am in rare form tonight. You're going to find out why. The world is not as it seems. It's not. United States attacks us. Only half an hour remain of Israel's lifespan. Now, Mr. Zonar, the chairman of the Iranian Parliament's National Security and Foreign Policy Commission, said on Monday, but Thursday morning, Israel time, Bibi Netanyahu stated to the press, prepare, it's over. The time has come for an ending of this. Iran must pay the price for its aggressions, and I believe it is the will of our mighty God that must prevail. This is out of Bibi's lips. My, how quickly world events are changing, and the times that have predicted as we see all this unfolding right now before our eyes, and it's being made clear that, at least to me, that the Psalms War comes after the Gog War. For a long time, I believed it happened at the same time, or maybe the Psalms War come first, but now it's crystal clear. The Psalms War is going to come after the Gog War, and it will be at a time when we cannot help Israel. The Russians will indeed, by treaty, come to the aid, including attacks upon our fleet and homeland, our cities. If we continue the forecast, this culling of the tares, the judgment of the nations in this war, we're also seeing a separate and very distinctive sign written about the Great Deception, and we know clearly now what comprises this. The pit angels loosened have had ample time enough to comply with demonic, satanic heart of Satan's very plans for us. Very perfect, they believe, plan of all plans, to deceive the world with the so-called aliens. Been giving their own tech to us and recognizing even who they are now fully. Demons, the aliens in our own skies that now say we have full disclosure in double-digit days. It's not very long. Then we're going to consider the larger picture here because let's run back to Bibi. The statement came the very first day that Iran acknowledged it had violated the Joint Comprehensive Agreement, this Iran nuclear deal, and is now exceeding the amount of enriched uranium in its possession beyond the agreed-upon quantity of 300 kilograms. Well, Israel then attacks with 20 jet fighters, as we know just happened, 15 F-16s and 5 F-35 advanced fighters with a very well-designed missile package, a exacting strike on at least 15 targets belonging to both Hezbollah and Iran, as well as a S-300 launcher that was totally destroyed, along with several Russian advisors manning it. The attacks were said to have been conducted by Israel jets from Lebanese airspace and naval attacks. Syrian forces reported that 4 people were killed in the attacks, and its air defense system intercepted some of the incoming Israeli missiles. I don't believe that for a minute. They described powerful explosions and huge fires at the Iranian Revolutionary Guards and Hezbollah bases in the Oman Mountains, and ambulances screaming to the scene all the way from Damascus. Military sources add that Israel delayed its latest rounds of attacks on the Iranian and Hezbollah positions in Syria to give U.S. and Russian diplomacy a chance to reach some understandings on Syria's situation. But their efforts have run in straight to the ground this week, and currently the Israeli military was ordered to go forward on this mission. Was a huge success. About 35-40 Iranians died in that, and about 5 Russians. So I would call that a large success. Now, Israel's wide-ranging strikes on the 1st of July aimed at preempting that Iranian Hezbollah operation before it even got off the ground was, in fact, Trump's own plan with Bibi to enact tanker revenge in the Gulf of Oman. Bet you didn't know that. Then other world events are blowing up in her face. It's just a lot.
Logic clearly dictates that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Oh, don't they, Mr. Spock? Don't they? Now, world news, Russia and the United States, some believe, may have been in a submarine war. It's being released all over the press in various places that somehow the United States was involved in attacking a Russian submarine. This news is being released at the top levels, but also being censored by the very top. And a U.S. attack submarine did launch a torpedo and struck a Russian submarine attempting to deploy a test run of the nuclear Tsami underwater Tsar bomb. That's right. Largest bomb ever detonated was the Russian Tsar 3-stage hydrogen bomb, as we all know. In this underwater torpedo they are attempting to deploy, our test has the same yield bomb inside that was designed to detonate at our east or west coast to flood our very land with nuclear waste cesspool of deadly floodwaters, killing everything in its path. While attempting to deploy this new epic game-changing weapon, a U.S. submarine commander decided he could not allow this, messaged U.S. Naval Command, and the head of Joint Chiefs decided it must be stopped. Thus, the big fury of EAMs that we all heard this week over the Emergency Communications Network, where the President orders various things to the fleet. Dozens and dozens of very, very long EAMs. And the head of the Joint Chiefs decided it must be stopped and ordered the attack, and then informed the President. Kind of a end-around run of the President. The President was quite angry, and so was Putin. And for 4 hours this week, as we slept and no one knew, we were only minutes from a full-out start of the Gog War. And only by full-blown talk between Putin and Pence did this get fixed. Enough to avert war, yet only for now. As you see such times come in which God's protection plan for us is definitely prayer. Better be praying. And to do all he said, even hide under a rock. That's what we have to do. Even the folks in Israel will run to Petra underground over the things coming. It will be worldwide, 1/3 of all life, and you best be on high alert. Don't live in fear. Just be aware that our words spoken by our Father are coming true. They're coming past. The last very letter of his words are falling into place. Need to go, and we need to survive until such time as God takes us home. We will help each other. We must. We must love each other, and love each other very hard, as the spirit of evil and wickedness is soon upon all of us. It's not going to be very pretty. Now I've got some other news, very terrifying. This is very close to home. But it is a sign of the monsters chained in the pit, maybe. You decide. Oak Ridge National Laboratory in eastern Tennessee, about 30 miles from my home, where I'm broadcasting from right now. A physicist, Mrs. Leah Brassard, whom I have spoken with on the telephone today. She declined to give me a full interview because she said she did not have time, but we still talked for every bit of 15 minutes. And I got an idea of what she is trying to do, and she wants this to be spread out among the media, because she expects something miraculous to happen because they've found something. Are you listening? She calls it a oscillation. We've known for time, as Telsa said, that if you want the absolute keys to the universe, think in terms of frequency and energy. Well, I'm telling you, this oscillation that she's discovered will lead her to a mirror matter, a thing called mirror matter. But the idea is fundamentally in this something that others have not tried to do and not had happen. Her discovery makes this process very likely. In a series of experiments she is now about to enact at Oak Ridge this summer, Brassard will send beams of subatomic particles down a 50-foot tunnel past a ring of very powerful magnets into an impenetrable wall. If the setup is just right, and if the universe does cooperate, some of these particles will transform into mirror image versions of themselves, allowing them to tunnel right through the wall. And if that happens, Broussard will have uncovered the first evidence of a mirror world right alongside our own, with other beings there. Now, Mars, that just proves where the other world is. What about these beings? Oh my goodness. Well, it's pretty wacky, Broussard said of her mind-bending exploration as she recounted this on the phone for me. The mirror world, assuming it exists, would have its own laws of mirror physics and be a dimension very similar to our own. Ooh. Current theory allows that you might find mirror atoms and mirror rocks, maybe even mirror planets, mirror stars, even mirror people. Collectively, they could form an entire shadow world just beyond our own. Yes, it does sound Twilight Zone-ish, but guess what? This just happens to be a real experiment. And with her new oscillation theory, believes mathematically sound, she will indeed find these mirror beings. Ooh. Now, Broussard says her initial search for these mirror people won't be especially difficult. It is a pretty straightforward experiment that we cobbled together with parts we found lying around using equipment and resources. This thing will basically be a giant mirror on the backside reflecting into where we can completely see this other realm. Oh, it's getting better. Wait a minute. She said most of this equipment and resources have already been available for a long time at Oak Ridge, and we're just pulling it out of dusty closets. And she unequivocally detects even a single mirror particle. It would prove at least that the visible universe is only half of what is out there that we can physically see and detect because of some boundaries within the human realm of existence. That's right. So in other words, our bodies can only detect certain things. I mean, some of us can detect the supernatural. Some of us can say, oh, there's something bad right over there. Ooh. Well, there are sometimes. But in this mirror world, assuming it exists, and she is able to make the entire plate full of these particles, it will be a viewing monitor into this other world, and she said a portal to it. Ooh. Well, we go on. As she said, it won't be particularly difficult. Pretty straightforward experiment. We cobbed together with parts we found lying around using equipment and resources we've already had available at Oak Ridge. If you discover something like that, the game totally changes, she said. 10 seconds that will rock physics. As with many grand scientific quests, the hunt for mirror matter grew out of small, seemingly esoteric mystery. Starting in the 1990s, physicists developed a high-precision experiment to show and study how neutrons, particles found in the nucleus of atoms, break down into protons, a process related to radioactivity. But these experiments took a strange turn. And she found this oscillation based upon these experiments. Now, she found that a similar one that Broussard will use will last 14 minutes, 48 seconds on average before decaying into protons, and will give her at least 14 minutes of mirror time into the other world. Ooh. She says, we take this discrepancy very serious, and we believe that this is a foregone conclusion that this exists, and this experiment will prove it in a way never before done. It is just a real cross between two experiments, but if works right, will be a collection of being able to see interdimensionally and any beings that may exist therein. Ooh. Yeah, well, we understand what's going on there. Now, that's definitely looking through the looking glass. Now, Broussard's goal is to find out if this portal really exists, and if so, to open it in a methodical way, where her neutron beam and impenetrable wall come in, these parts that she's been able to get a hold of. What she needed was Oak Ridge's 85-watt mega nuclear reactor that can shoot out billions of these neutrons on demand. So getting through raw material. You remember the age-old adage question, what would happen if a immovable object hit a impenetrable barrier? What may happen? Well, this is that experiment, but something unique happens. These atoms will become mirror atoms and emerge the backside and pretty much make a viewing portal into this other mirror world. She says she is convinced and that she is about to prove it. Well, that is definitely life on the far side. If some neutrons oscillated into these mirror neutrons, they would disappear from our apparatus and appear on the other side. Kirsch's team has already run the experiment at least in single-digit power and hopes to have their results analyzed later before the main set of experiments is carried out. In other words, they're hoping to at least see one pixel show up somewhere on the screen. And if that pixel shows up, then they're going to hit it, that impenetrable object, with everything that can come out of Oak Ridge, all 75 megawatts. It's going to be very interesting indeed. So, be aware. I mean, things are happening in this world that are almost unexplainable. And since the 1970s, most of these astrophysicists, astronomers decided that the universe is stacked full of this dark matter and other substances that can't be observed directly, but whose powerful gravitational pull helps keep galaxies from flying apart, slows down other laws of physics, changes matter around it, and the amount of identifiable matter in our universe that we have detected is about 6%. You think about that for a minute. Think of the things that we have not yet uncovered. We don't even know what that's made out of. And she says that this alternate universe will contain a lot of dark matter, more than our own existence. And probably each successive universe contains a little more dark matter, separating it from our universe and other universes. Viewing into this could be very dangerous. But she's determined to look into the other side. She says that, we don't know what's there. And even at her most recent physics conference, she expanded on this idea, outlining the experiment, a possible parallel reality, just one of many that is already proven to exist. of this mirror life, mirror stars, mirror galaxies, mirror black holes, mirror demons, mirror everything. Mirror, everything's a mirror. Maybe even dark life, but it will definitely be a viewer into that realm. Dark people, she said, is probably a bit far-fetched, but they will be like us, just living parallel lives with different decisions, different outcomes. She said that these ideas push her right to the edge of her comfort zone, but to see into this universe will become very important in the coming days. Folks, I want you to figure that out and ponder why our scientists are up to these things. It is definitely, it's definitely crazy. Well,
requested function will require 2 hours to complete.
It's impossible! Things like this can't happen!
They're happening. They're happening right before our eyes. Alright, the next thing is I told you that I was in rare form tonight. I am, because our next story, if that one wasn't terrifying enough, this one will definitely turn you blue. Very cold blue. World's first floating nuclear power plant, the NPP, built by Russia and called the Asmanik Moskov, has received a license for operation. In fact, it is in transit now to the Arctic, remote region of the Arctic that they own. According to Rosmagdan, very hard to pronounce, at the end of August, the vessel will be towed from there, its furthest north point, to Prevec, a port city on the Arctic coast of the Chitaka region. It will thus become the northernmost operating nuclear plant in the world. Well, there's a reason that they want an atomic reactor at the North Pole. And this isn't a little bitty reactor neither. It's shipborne, but this thing is big. This is a big, big reactor. Now, Russia's to set up oil deposit clusters, tap huge Arctic energy reserves, and they will need the power to drill. In December, the NPP will begin sending energy to Prevec, this NPP, this giant ship, we're calling it the NPP. That's what the Russians call it. Giant floating nuclear station, which will allow the phasing out of 2 onshore power stations, which are very small. They're both coal-fired, and they're just tired of bringing ships up there offloading coal, and these plants are not doing the deal. But there's something strange about all of this. We're going to get to that in a minute. Now, Chitaka is one of the most isolated regions in Russia, with probably most of its territory located beyond the Arctic Circle, where poor transport links and permafrost complicate very large-scale constructions. The NPP is expected to become one of the key infrastructure elements in the development of Russia's northern sea route. The economic Losmosov boats 2 KLT-40 reactors capable of producing up to 70 megawatts. Now listen to me. I'm reading this, so it's going to be a little slow. But you're going to need to understand what's going on here, because you haven't been shocked today. Not yet. You're about to be. 70 megawatts of electricity off this boat, and 50 gigacalories an hour of heat energy. Better listen. The reactors are a new modification of the KLM-40 units used by the Tamar-class shallow shaft draft nuclear-powered icebreakers and some of their newest atomic submarines. A single unit can produce enough energy and heat to meet the demands of a city of a population of 100,000. There's 2 of those on that boat. The power plant's operational lifespan is 40 years, which can be extended to 50 years with a brief update. Okay. Can be moved around with no hazardous materials left behind. But all these things that Russia claims that it's so good about, that having such a big power plant up there will help them, it's not for that reason. It's not to help them. Oh, it will help them. But it will only help them by hurting us. And it's going to hurt us unbelievable. How many of you remember the so-called prophet Edgar Cayce? Any of you familiar with his 2025 maps of the United States? How flooded the United States was? That basically the Great Lakes had drained into the Mississippi River and it had flooded completely, separating, destroying many states completely, utterly. 20, 30 foot of water. Russia is going to launch its first train to the Arctic region for foreign tourists. And the NPP will become the first of a proposed fleet of floating nuclear power plants. Did you hear that? A proposed fleet of nuclear power plants that can provide heat and energy to Russia's remote regions. They don't need it. There's not enough people there. But that's beside the point. Wait a minute. And assist in natural resource extraction. Russia also plans to lease the plants to other countries where they will be used for electricity production and water desalination so that they could sell off the excess electricity and make money for the motherland. As the facility could be converted into even a desalination plant with production capacity of 240,000 cubic meters of melted water and fresh water a day. But wait, there's more. Well, now the classified real reason for Russia doing this, you're not going to like what you hear next. They're going to melt enough sea ice to raise the USA watershed over a small 4-year period time to flood the Mississippi River exactly as Edgar Cayce said to the very letter. Russia's floating nuclear power plant ready to heat up the Arctic is the headline and the pure truth hiding in plain sight. If you use Google Earth, you can clearly see there is no such city of a size, proportion, this thing could power there, and literally thousands of miles of wasteland where no cables will be laid to power the nearest city. Most of what Russia posted was a lie. And you have to understand that you can use Google Earth. You can see clearly that there's none of these places there. Smallest such inhabitable place is about 8,000 people where it's going to dock at. And believe me, you don't need those kind of gigawatts for 20, even 10, 20, 30,000 people. You just don't need that. And, well, it's a land-based platform that they have been building out there for almost 2.5 years, separate from the reactor ship. And it's on the main glacier there attached, where there is a mountainous region. They believe the water is not going to rise above those mountains, that it will probably not threaten any of Russia, really, but devastate lots of places in Europe, Italy, otherwhere wise that the sea level would be increased, that it would affect populations, but mainly the United States. And this top secret ice melting plant that will release the geolocated exploits at the Pravamusk plant to make major sea level changes will be starting by winter this year. Enough of the two main glaciers to shift enough water to further a scene known exploit that they can use versus the United States without ever firing a shot, and they will leave the United States map changed forever. Land inland in Arkansas alone will be flooded with 12 or more feet of water as far as Little Rock, and southwards leaving as little of the state as possible. Florida, Louisiana will be nothing but very small islands. They are building up this superheater now, and the ship has been launched and will soon arrive powered up. Imagine what we're going to do about them raising the ocean levels. In 4 years, it will be divide and conquer, and we will be defeated. Imagine that, Russia. Well, there's so many other things. I mean, last week, New York Times asked the question, who's killing the whales? And in the Pacific Ocean. And shifting gears a little bit to these whales, you need to know that since January, at least 167 of these North Pacific gray whales have washed up ashore dead from Mexico to Alaska. And that's probably just a small fraction of the number that's actually died and that have sunk to the seafloor. And the number of known deaths is high enough that the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has declared an unusual mortality event with a possible extinction level event going on in the Pacific Ocean. Now, we know why, but hold on. Pronouncement that has sent activities and many scientists scrambling to figure out what's going on. So, my opinion, good luck with that. See 167 dead North whales, just a tiny scratch on the surface when you consider the true devastation unrailing across a huge stretch of the Pacific Ocean, often referred to as the paradise zone for fishermen. Not fishing there anymore. New York Times report goes on to say that interdisciplinary teams of scientists, have been shifting through a profusion of data. For example, sea ice extent, ocean temperature, food availability, net entanglement, fishing gear, marine pollution, toxic algae, other things, and they've come with a startling conclusion. In the sense of this kind of old-fashioned detective work, but it seems like even I could get this right, and I'm definitely not a oceanographer. Fukushima. This weekend, the Big Wobble reported thousands of dead mussels. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands. Their shells gasping and scorched, and their meats thoroughly cooked along a 150-mile stretch of Northern California coastline. According to experts, a record-breaking June heat wave apparently caused the largest die-off of mussels in the last 15 years. However, each and every mussel tested had lethal doses of Fukushima radiation. Then in 2011, let's go back a little bit, reports from scientists revealed starfish were melting, and yes, melting, and the shellfish populations were breaking down from Alaska all the way down to Mexico. But now, all of a sudden, they're almost non-existent. And rather conveniently, New York Times has not bothered to mention small but significant facts that along the same coastline, thousands, yes, thousands of leopard sharks have mysteriously died in the San Francisco Bay Area since 2017. Thousands, almost the entire population. In fact, they're now considered being on the endangered species list. The common murre, it's a seabird, have been found dead all across from St. Lawrence Island to Shisham Reef, Southern California. And it's thought millions of the little birds have died since 2015, but the true number will never be known. Again, they're not going to tell us. New report now claims that the dying seabirds are now turning up as far as San Francisco. Not to mention the collapse of the salmon fishing industry in Canada and Alaska, and the disappearance of sardines, anchovies, tuna. A little can of anchovies now is $10. $10 for a little can of anchovies to put on your pizza. Notice the big pizza places no longer offering anchovies on your pizza. Just thought I'd mention that. It's causing many West Coast fishermen to go bankrupt. Also, not mentioned there, thousands of dead puffins washing up along the Alaskan coast. Stranger still, the puffins don't startle and move away when people approach them. These poor birds just fall over into their bellies, too weak to even waddle. And they've been tested hot for Fukushima radiation. Last month, Bill Laughing Bear, our friend in Alaska, who's monitoring the fish up there, radiation, come across one of the dead gray whales mentioned above, and he claims radiation levels were higher than many of the salmon and halibut levels he had tested earlier today, and its liver was lethally hot. Really? It's very sad what's going on in our oceans. And, you know, there's just been so many things that are going on. These radiation levels are up to 6,000 times higher than those found in the open ocean and found in Atlantic seafood. And if you look to prove that it's radiation, you can see other examples in other places like the cracked Marshall Islands nuclear Rundit Dome. The radioactive shellfish found near this dome, it's a concrete-capped waste site known by the locals as the Tomb. It's yet another site where we exploded a nuclear bomb. They bulldozed all the waste into a hole and put a concrete cap over it, and it's out in the ocean as well. And they're saying levels of radiation around it now are starting to look much like Fukushima nuclear radiation levels. It's very bad. Pacific Ocean is dying. Well, there's problems because someone has to understand that as the Japanese homeland initiative, and it's part of a how can I describe this? A prefecture by prefecture councils who meet to determine certain things. They've all come to a unanimous agreement that with the doctors and scientists involved that in 35 years there will be no Japan. The population simply will not be able to procreate and keep itself sustainable. Just won't be. The males are becoming very sterile. The females are becoming sterile. The associations with cancer around Fukushima are very, very high, and they have literally poisoned their own water table, and it's severely contaminated. They report, and it's become very big underground news. Now we've got more. Listen to this. This is going to rock you. Japan plans to set up a government-backed insurance fund to put money into Tokyo Electric Power and pay the compensation stemming from the disaster of Fukushima nuclear power plant. And the Nikkei newspaper has stated from their head brass that the Japanese government feels responsible for the oceans, the Pacific Ocean's death. Now, wait a minute, that seems massive. So now we've got a country that's responsible for the entire ocean's death. So they want to set up this insurance company. Now listen to this. Got to make a profit off this, of course. Asia's largest utility, known as TEPCO, has determined how and much it will have to pay residents and businesses year after year for the next 180,000 years. For the Fukushima disaster and their families for eons of generations to come, who are forced to evacuate and may have to stay evacuated after that March 11th earthquake and tsunami that caused all these deadly radiation links and everything to fail there, including Core 3 now falling off into the ocean. Bottom line is, TEPCO is too big to fail, said Jason Roberts, a credit analyst at Barclays Capital in Singapore, who has now decided to take up their insurance qualifications. Oops. But that is not to say they won't be held accountable. It's possible right now to quantify the financial impact at this point, but this disaster is likely to drag on for some time. Japan does feel responsible. TEPCO, which supplies roughly a third of electricity to the world's largest economy, had $91 billion of debt in its books before the March crisis, and since taking on this $24 billion bank loan, and may face giving it and billions more away. So now comes to the rescue J.P. Morgan. Now, J.P. Morgan has estimated TEPCO could face 2 trillion yen, or $24 billion a year, in compensation losses in the financial that started retroactively all the way back to the day the crisis started. TEPCO is going to make an initial compensation payment of 50 billion yen, which will total the Japanese economy. But according to Koshima, their finance minister, it really doesn't matter because we must do something. Our nation is dead anyway. Now, you think about it, when they start to admit themselves that they've literally poisoned themselves into non-existence and that in 2 or 3 generations their nation will be gone because of their stupidity, and we've got 120 of these things on our own soil, you really have to wonder. But they are thinking about even such silly things as pay cuts to the board of managers, like that will increase the amount of money they'll have to give away for eons and eons. Think it's funny. It's not. The pollution of our oceans is serious. And soon, when we can't eat out of our largest ocean, that's kind of a problem. Japanese media has later reported that TEPCO will sell $1.2 billion worth of real estate to help pay for victims. Okay, that is, believe it or not, 1/5 of Japan's real estate. You understand how serious this is? In 6 weeks or so, Reactors 3 core will be completely into the reservoir that leads directly into the ocean. It will not be able to be stopped. There is no further containment. So how do we pay the entire world for the death of the entire ocean and our nation? What will we do? Said Japan's president Thursday. Now, how's that for some shocking news? You understand our world is in big crisis. From nuclear war, possibility of war with Russia, the fact that people are not prepared, not preparing, they're not doing the critical infrastructure things that they need to do as a family. They live by the day instead of living by the month. Their circumstances doesn't require them to do anything else. They don't believe these things will ever touch their doorstep. Yet, suddenly and soon, they're about to. This has been Mars with the Watcher's Prophecy News. I want to thank you tonight for coming, and enjoy our future news update shows. They'll be posted. Thank you again. This is Mars. Good night.